But what happens is in our mind, mental models are so frozen with the way platforms are working, which is providing complete end-to-end service of buyers and seller, and the way we try to interpret the world in that framework. And that is the biggest challenge.
We've been increasingly hearing about ONDC everywhere, the open network for digital commerce. But at the same time, there's enormous speculation about how a framework like this would work and how it would potentially kill any sort of monopoly, be it Amazon or Flipkart. In today's conversation, we have Thampy Koshy, Director of ONDC, clarifying some of these fundamental questions on how will ONDC benefit buyers? How will ONDC benefit sellers? How should the different arms of the e-commerce industry, be it packaging, delivery, shipping, etc., position themselves to participate in the system? How should startups look for opportunities to build on top of ONDC? And many more such questions. I personally got a lot of my questions clarified, and I found this conversation really insightful, and I hope you feel the same way about it. So wear your attention glasses on and watch this conversation with Thampy Koshy on Curiously with KVK. Hi, Koshy, sir. Thanks for taking time to chat with me today. And I hope this session will unravel more about ONDC and sort of understand more about what ONDC is and what it means for the different stakeholders in the system. So do you want to maybe begin by talking about how did this idea of ONDC come into being?
Okay, there are two things sort of drove the idea of ONDC. Two, as you know, that when a couple of years ago, when pandemic became a big challenge and the Ministry of Commerce, DPIIT, was very seriously looking at how can we improve the access of grocery and those kind of things to the people who are caught up at home. And the kirana stores and the shopkeepers who were sort of restricted from accessing. So there had been that is one of the challenges that the ministry faced among many of them. So they had put together a small team to look at what are the possible way in which technology can be used to strengthen the whole digital commerce. That was one idea. So while in the initial stages, they were trying to look at as a short-term thought process for enabling digital access for kirana stores, etc. during this pandemic time. Then they said that is, we should, when we're looking at a government, it should look at with, a different point of view of how to really make a quantum change in the way the commerce is undertaken, so that the penetration of digital commerce can significantly increase from the current level of about 7% for the buyer side and less than 1% for the seller side. So they created a steering committee of professionals and senior bureaucrats coming together to debate on the idea of how can we democratize digital commerce to enhance the participation to a broader cross-section of society, both sellers and buyers. That is on one side was there. On the other side, as you are aware, that there had been development that is taking place in our country with respect to development of open source, population scale, digital platforms, public good, which you would see the Aadhaar was one, UPI as the other, and ABTM for the health is other. One of the similar initiatives, as you're familiar with the payments item, the UPI, and said, can we extend that same logic of developing a completely unbundled and interoperable network of various players coming together, giving them equal opportunity in the marketplace based on what they have to offer and what they can offer, and not based on some captive users that they have. So that was the thought process behind establishing an idea called Open Network for Digital Commerce. And then we went about developing this idea to develop the necessary digital rails, develop the necessary organizational capabilities, and then work with the industry to get them participating. And that's how we proceeded till now.
So when you're making this comparison with UPI, we understand that UPI is a framework, and today we have many client apps on it, be it Bharat Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, Google Pay, many of these client apps that people use to transact with UPI from one bank to another. So when we're talking about a similar setting with ONDC as the underlying framework, what does it mean for the different client apps that have to be built over this? How should one client app look at differentiating themselves from the other, and what is the business model that they have to potentially pursue?
See, let's first look at what is ONDC enabling in the digital commerce. One, it is unbundling. What do you mean by unbundling? Is that there could be seller interface can be a separate in a building block handled by a separate entity to help the sellers to make their catalog visible on the network using an open protocol.
Okay.
There could be buyer application whose job is only to get the buyers to come to this open network and look for what they want to buy from this large number of sellers will be available in the network. So each of them will be able to specialize in what they want to offer. Let's say if you think like a buyer platform, I'll just give you two examples. Let's say there could be somebody who's got large number of digital consumers. Okay, let's say it could be telco, it could be bank or phone pay or whatever, fintech companies. They are not in digital commerce. They are only in their own, like maybe banking or telco and so on and so forth. If they had to make digital commerce available, they had to do two things. One is a suitable buyer interface. Correct? Right. Second thing is they need to have a link up with all the sellers.
Right.
ONDC takes care of the latter. They don't have to worry about getting sellers. Sellers will be there, taken for granted. Now, what they need to do is a very smart buyer interface to help and be truly a buyer's agent and help them to buy what they want. Okay, so it could be, there could be, I'm just saying, and when they're buying in the open network, it can be commerce, it could be services, it could be mobility, it could be hotel, everything can come.
Right.
So now the buyer applications innovation should be how I make the buying experience more interesting. How can I giving a lot more market intelligence for that person to buy? For example, if they say that, I am coming as a buyer and during Onam time and they realize, hey, Koshy, you are a Malayali, you would like to get something special for Onam. Okay, so they need to recognize me and make what is special for me and go and search it out for me from the whole network, what is good for me.
Right.
Similarly, let's take the case of a seller application. Let's say that you decide to set up a seller aggregation platform for helping the artisans of Bangalore. Then what you will look at is how do you make their life easy? How will you help them to digitize their catalogs? How do you make it ONDC protocol compliant? How can you also add additional value-added input for them to make the selling experience much better?
Right.
Okay, so that could be the initiative. You look at the seller platform and you could be developing something for a very specialized, let's say a small community of artisans of Karnataka, or you could be trying to develop something for the garment manufacturer across India, or let's say sari makers of Kanchipuram. Okay, each of them can be specialized platform meeting the interest of a specialized segment of sellers to help them make their catalog visible to these 1 billion customers who are coming anyway.
Right. So it's sort of the buyer agent's responsibility to make every seller visible on their buying platform.
Yes. The way it is to take the search intent from the buyer and throw out the search intent to the network so that they get the relevant response from the relevant sellers. It is not that they have to go and list everybody. There's nothing called listing here.
Right.
That's why I'm segregating because it's a huge pool of sellers available.
Right. So if I sort of maybe draw back in comparison with Google, do you sort of see like a equivalent of search engine optimization happening
No,
here?
it's not just, it is Google is only a search engine.
Right.
There is no commercial transaction that is being there.
Sure.
Okay. And there, so whereas in this case, the buying platform is trying to help you to buy.
Right.
Okay. So he is representing the interest of the buyer, not the seller.
Okay. And how is the interest of the sellers represented? Because when we talk about these claims of...
No, sir. First and foremost, what do you mean by interest of the sellers?
Having a democratic chance to be the seller.
So every seller Now every seller can make their catalog visible using this protocol with any seller aggregators or by himself.
Okay.
Okay. Now when let's say that I go to, let's say, buying platform provided by, let's say, Paytm. Okay. And say that I want to buy a mobile phone with value of 20,000 to 30,000 rupees range, delivery one day, customer rating should be so on, it should be Android, and whatever. The buyer application will help me to give my specifications, what I want. And that specification now, it will broadcast, it will give it to a gateway in the system. And the gateway will look at and say, who are the sellers who are capable of meeting this request. So it will broadcast to everybody. Today, so in that way, the buyer application not way trying to push any product. He is broadcasting to all relevant sellers. Now all the relevant sellers can make their offer. Now when it comes to the buying application, he has no loyalty to any sellers, correct? He doesn't even know who are the sellers.
Right.
His loyalty is totally to the buyers.
Right.
You'll say, hey, Koshy, would you want to sort it on price? You want to sort it on rating? You want to sort it on delivery time? You want to base it on operating system or whatever it is. So the buying application's loyalty is to the buyer, not to the seller. And the seller application's loyalty is to the seller. He will try to make the relevant responses and relevant offers. He will probably, the seller may say that, okay, if you are, I may be able to give you this phone, plus I may be able to give an airport at 50,000. 50% discount.
Right.
Okay. So each party will try to maximize their client's interest and they will come together. This is how the physical market works, correct?
Right. So it's sort of basically trying to optimize for the best deal and the best quality of service.
Yeah. And they will come together and come to a conclusion without anybody trying to push anybody's agenda into a thing. So I as a platform will not come like, hey, Krishna, buy only this one. Why? Because he gives you more commission.
Right. So this entire gateway that pushes out the relevant results of sellers is undertaken by ONDC itself.
See, the way it is, this gateway, the architecture provide for multiple gateway who can be independent entities. Okay. So as of now, there's only one gateway. In future, there could be multiple gateways.
Okay.
And that gateway has no loyalty with anybody. He doesn't even deal directly with any sellers or any buyers.
Okay. Then why multiple gateways?
They only have a broadcasting and asynchronous API call request based on a registry which is maintained by ONDC.
Got it. Then what's the role for multiple such gateways? One gateway, I mean, almost every gateway would yield the same results, right?
Yeah, exactly the same result because for them they will broadcast.
Got it. Okay. So how should other intermediary services, maybe like packaging, logistics, shipping, these services integrate themselves?
Interesting point. So let's take the case. If you look at these are all building blocks of transaction, correct?
Right.
Buying interface is a building block. Selling interface is a building block. Logistics is a building block. Packaging is a building block. Warehousing is a building block.
Right.
Eventually, we will be able to have each of these building blocks offering their services on the network and the protocol enabling a seamless integration for all of them. Let me be a little more, give you an example.
Sure.
Let's say I go to, let's say, buying application Paytm.
Okay.
And when I went to Paytm and said that I want to order food. Okay. And food means it has to be hyper local. I'm looking for Chinese food. So it sort of sent the request to, the gateway sent to all the nearby restaurants, and the nearby restaurants gave the answer back. And I, let's say, place the order for, let's say, for my food from Kamat's restaurant. Okay. When the Kamat may have, Kamat may have already tied up back-to-back logistics provider. In that case, his offer will be with logistics so much. Okay. Probably Kamat has no linkages with any logistics provider. So logistics provider will be available as a service in the network. Let's say Danso, load share, e-card, whatever it is. So the Kamat's hotel will do a back-to-back search in the network for a logistics provider. And let's say Denso picks it up.
Okay.
So I as an end consumer doesn't know any of this thing happening. So my order went to Paytm, it went to Kamath tied up with Danso to come and pick it up and deliver to me.
Right.
To my, as an end consumer, for me, I had only dealt with Paytm. I have nothing else.
Okay.
So that way, experience of commerce is seamless to the buyer and the seller.
Okay, and what if any of these modules, if one of them mess up, let's say the package was messed up by the delivery agent, who's to be held responsible in this?
So today also, how does it work? Okay, what will happen is, let's say I made a buy through Paytm. When Paytm did when the Kamath restaurant did a back-to-buy buy from Danzo, it is his agent, correct? Even today, if I order from Kamath and he deliver, and if there's a problem, who takes care of? Kamath restaurant take care of, correct?
Right.
He will settle with if he has a problem, he will settle with the Danzo.
Okay. But it's not that
I as a consumer will only go to Paytm and say that I have a problem.
Right.
I have a problem, and this Paytm will immediately, because Paytm only collected the information, he doesn't have any, he's not a seller, correct? Now, right. He will forward that. Even today, Amazon or Swiggy also forwards to the seller, correct?
Right.
So he will sell it to the seller application. Okay. Based on, so he will take a call. He'll say, probably he'll ask for some evidence or whatever it is. Otherwise, he'll say, okay, I don't want to mess up my reputation in the network. I'm just going to. That's how the business decisions are taken, correct?
Sure.
It cannot be by each person has to be responsible. So he is responsible for the service that he renders.
Okay.
And there again, that is one thing that he'll sign up a contract. Every time he places see, when this order came from Paytm to Kamath, it came with saying that I want this, South Indian thali, and I'm paying you 100 rupees, and I will have to deliver it in the next 1 hour time, whatever. All these things, the Kamath actually signs a digitally signed contract with the buyer.
Okay.
So these are all, and his performance will be continuously tracked. Supposing he keeps on doing dumb stuff and doesn't compensate, so his network rating gets screwed up. So no buyer application will select him as a buyer.
Okay.
And and his rating will be available public information. So I look at it and say, this guy's got a very lousy reputation. I don't want to buy that.
Got it. Okay. So all that the gateway does is maybe pushes recommendations or the list of sellers.
Gateway doesn't say recommended, gateway
broadcasts the list of sellers, and it's up to the buyer to choose who to go ahead with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So one question here. Let's talk about, let's say, someone who is making their first sell, right? Maybe they're just into the business, and at this point, there's not much metrics for them to prove themselves. So how do they sort of really stand out for the buyer?
That's the same project today also, correct? So he will, so there is one thing is he will have to think about how do we create this brand building. Okay. And people will try to, on the side, buyer side, he may be giving on maybe special offers or pricing or whatever it is. And it has to, and if you look at today in any platform also, okay, when you go there and just push the step, ask for the first time when you're there, he has to establish credibility there. Right. So he has to build up his brand.
Right.
It is not a platform who's building a brand, correct?
Right. But early on, at least brands have the option of promoting their sales or promoting themselves through advertisements. Let's say on Amazon.
They can continue to send their advertisement. Who's preventing them to do the advertisement? Okay. Only thing, what we are telling is treat the buyer fairly. And give him the transparent information. Don't push any product because the seller is asking you to push. Make it very clear. Make it very clear to the buyer. He can, if he wants to give some, when he sends this detail, he will send him the catalog. Catalog will have all this information.
Got it.
Not saying that you want masala dosha and he'll just send you masala dosha. He will give you a catalog. Right. So that catalog, the sellers will try to make them distinct. They're trying to make them distinct by suitable presentation of their products in their catalog.
Okay. So I think one thing that I really gathered from this conversation is ONDC is a buyer-first network, and that's probably one of the things that we understand.
ONDC is a democratic network giving equal opportunity to everybody.
Sure. Okay. But it sort of drives the engine by keeping the interest of
Says
the
that
buyers and
the seller should be able to present what he's good at and try to get his product.
Mhm.
And the buyer should be able to decide what he is good for him and then buy what he wants.
Got it. Okay.
So each of them have their agent looking at their interest without bringing a conflict of interest.
Right. So the only way a smaller seller could potentially stand out is by giving a better deal, or
Yeah.
having claimed a
It
better
could be,
service.
no, it could be, for example, he might be saying that I can deliver in half an hour's time because I'm just around your corner.
Okay.
Okay. Or I can give a better price, or probably I can give you a complimentary product. Or probably look at my advertisement. Look at here. You go and search, click here, and then see what's the endorsement I'm getting.
Fair enough.
So he will look at the different, possibility. Now, on the other side, the buyer, as a buyer's agent, okay, may say that, buyer, he could ask the buyer that should I give you, any recommendations, okay, based on public information. Should I help you to search for the surveys? Because what happens today is that when the seller tries to push something, in a platform, when the seller pushes something, that it will become, you're trying to be treating the buyer not so fairly because you're trying to shape his mind. Whereas in the other case, he's trying to help him to make the right choice. That's a big difference. One is, am I trying to convince you, Krishna, that Lacoste is the best shirt? Or am I helping Krishna to help what is the best shirt that Krishna wants? Tell him Lacoste has this price, this advantage, this advertisement, probably this brand locally may have a different advantage.
Right.
Present to you these things. In fact, they may even have such nice, eventually, as they get more and more sophisticated, based on the kind of customers they are dealing with, they may have a different way of reaching across to those customers and helping them.
Got it. So for this entire process, at any point do you see ONDC sort of taking a commission of this entire cycle, or is it going to sort of remain free like UPI?
Sorry, I didn't understand. What's the question?
Will at any point ONDC take a commission for this, or will it remain free like UPI?
No, there will be eventually there will be some very small service charges that we will do.
Okay.
And as you know that ONDC is a Section 8 company and we need to only have income to make sure that we maintain ourselves.
Right.
Okay. And we are not trying to take premium based on some privileged positions that we have. And we don't have to give anybody any, we are not a listed company and we don't have to give anybody any dividend.
Right. So, but when we're talking about these service charges, how would it be structured? Who would it be levied on? Would it be the buyers? Would it be the buying agents?
Let's look at Krishna. How does the market works? Nobody is going to tell them how to run the business.
Right.
At the end of it, every product, at the end of it, the buyer pays.
Right.
Tell me, have you ever bought anything where unless somebody is giving you charity?
Sure.
So it's a question of who will, for example, it might be put in, for example, it might be built in the price. Okay. So buyer application may say that, okay, they may say that, okay, I'm only doing a help in a very small activity. So I need a very small amount of money. Okay. Probably I'm saying that I'm also getting customers for my other business. So I consider this as my advertisement cost. So I'll give it to you free of cost. Okay. Based on who is the buyer application. As in a buyer application could be telcos, it could be bankers, it could be specialized application. Probably somebody may come and say that I'm creating a very specialized application for students or for young professionals. So there I'm doing a lot of research. So I'm going to charge some premium price for the advice I give you. So the end consumer, the big difference is nobody is locked in. Okay. The exit barriers are zero. Second, there could be competition. Nobody has any privileged position because of the scale that they have or anything. So they have to establish their credibility based on what they are offering, not because they have a stranglehold on somebody.
Got it.
Or something. For example, if I give you an example, let's say in our mobile phone, one of the way in which there could be the control. I mean, the service provider was the their, what you call, the number. Even when the number became portable, even that is gone. Correct? Now?
Right.
It depends on what the service each of them give. If I don't like service from X, I'll go to Y. Exit and entry barriers, nothing there.
Right.
And there is nothing that is preventing, let's say, if supposing Krishna become the only buying platform and he wants to charge 50% margin.
Right.
There's nothing preventing from 10 other people to set up a buying
at a lower service charge. Right.
So open competition. There's nothing that is limiting and restricting competition. So the market clearing price will come for the kind of service being offered, for the kind of consumers they're dealing with.
Interesting. So you mentioned that this sort of brings up a level playing field for competition when it comes to the buyer interfaces, right? What advantage do you see in having hundreds of such buyer interfaces as opposed to, let's say, ONDC building its own buyer interface through which all buy transactions can happen?
If you look at our 1.5 billion people are of very diverse taste and preferences and context.
Right.
So it makes sense for people to develop specialized application to look at the specialized segment of people instead of trying to give one cookie cutters kind of image that just meets a requirement and make everybody use the same thing. How can we bring in innovation? By having multiple agencies to come.
Right.
And encourage. See, it is not that we are compelling everybody. Supposing there is one person who can take the interest of 1.5 billion people at the most competitive price, nobody else will succeed.
Right.
The saying is, there is nothing in the design that gives some special advantage to anybody to be the only one or only few.
Right.
It is left to how each of these parties prove their worth. If I just give you an example, let's say the knowledge sharing. Let's say you can have a website krishna.com, I can have one koshy.com. Both of can make HTML page for that. Both of us have the equal visibility. What will drive the traffic to koshy.com or krishna.com is what Krishna and Koshy has to offer.
Right.
So that is what is going to drive.
Okay, so just sort of going back one step here, when a buyer interface is recommending or showing products to the buyer, do they have the option to sort of skew around with the algorithms and again make a curated list that might
look at this way? What we have said is you should treat your buyers fair fashion. Okay. And you should commit, and even if you are using, let's take that, I'm just taking an example. You want to give them the option for sorting and filtering all of them. Say that give it to the client and be very transparent. Even if you want to go one step forward and say, see, if I as a buying application say that I can give you some specialized recommendation. Okay, based on number of parameters, your past history of buying and so on and so forth. Make it so transparently. Say that, Koshy, do you want this option?
Right. Be
transparent. Okay. That is what the direction that ONDC gives to all the buying application who comes to us. Okay. Now, what will enforce that kind of thing that will happen? Multiple things. One is because there is competition, there will be many people. Today, if there is only one or two persons, even if I know that Koshy is manipulating, you can't do anything about it. Second thing is there will be many more. Let's say when there are many more, and this manipulation is very discernible and figurable, correct now? For example, let's say there will be enough people like Krishnan who will go and do searches in multiple platforms and offer the same specifications because all the platforms have the access to the same kind of sellers. And see, is there some very definite skew that is coming? Then you will start publishing it, correct?
Right.
So if I just give you an example, imagine a mall. The mall has only 2 gates. It's possible to go and probably bribe the gatekeeper to tell anybody who comes and tell him in my shop.
Right.
Imagine there are 1,000 gates. Practically it's impossible for you to go and bribe all the 1,000 people. Or when one fellow says he's on the take, the other guy will say, hey, this guy is on the take, this guy is on the take.
Right.
So these kind of things become more self-correcting in that sense.
Right. So it's the scale of the markets that allow for such competition to really play their game.
Correct. There will be social audits coming up.
Got it. So what should anyone know about if they're planning to build for ONDC or on ONDC? Let's say they want to build a buying interface. They want to build any for any of the modules, be it logistics.
There are different things. One is if you are a seller yourself, you should try to go and find out who's an appropriate seller aggregator that you can work, unless you want to do it all by yourself.
Okay.
It's like, if I give you an example, like in an HTML page, you can either make your own HTML page, or you can do some standard thing like WordPress, or you can get a company who will make it for you. So that's the first choice that you need to make. If you are really say that I want to focus on my business, I will rather get an aggregator working. Let's say if I'm a grocery, I look for a grocery aggregator, and I have a D2C one, I'll go to that one. Okay, that is one kind of stuff. Second thing is that you want to be, you may have an interest, say that I want to become a seller aggregator. Okay, in that case, you would say that, how do I create a seller aggregator platform for ONDC? Okay, then who are the kind of sellers I'm planning to deal with? Okay, accordingly, you should develop that stuff, because the protocol is quite simple and straightforward. It's available, publicly available and free. Okay, and then if there is and for you to make this evaluation, every Tuesday we run a briefing session for people who are interested. So you can send a mail to team@ondc.org. You will get an invite, join that session, and try to understand try to get a slightly deeper understanding of what does it entail to be a buying platform, a selling platform, a logistic provider, or whatever it is. Right. And then you can start, then you decide which is the clientele you want to deal with, and accordingly then you start doing your coding and dealing with the clients. So it's not very complex. The point I'm saying, it's quite complex, quite simple, not costly. Enough public information is available. And I see on an average practically about 10 to 15 companies every week, adding to a pipeline of people who are signing up to get integrated.
Right. So across all these people who have signed up so far, what is one thing about ONDC that really, moves them, or the one attraction for them?
No, attraction for them is like, suddenly there is an opportunity for them to be in a marketplace and prove themselves. There's no entry barrier. If I'm in a seller applicant, I say, I don't have to worry about how to get the buyers. Buyers are all there. I have the access to the 1 billion buyers who will be there eventually from these telcos and bankers and everybody. Okay. And I'm a small logistics player. I'm saying that I want to make my logistics service available. So anybody who wants to use logistics will be able to discover me in the network. I don't have to go around and try to find every seller, and convince them. Or I could be saying that I'm going to create a specialized buying experience for a very specialized client segment. Or it is that I want to be even limiting my innovation, that I'm trying to create some language plugins. Okay. And going to sell the seller application. I want to give them the language plugins. So the possibilities are huge.
So before we conclude, one last question, sir. What do you think is the biggest myth when it comes to ONDC today?
Biggest myth is people think that it's some super app.
Okay.
And it's like some super app like Amazon or Flipkart or something in competition with them. The answer is no. This is a network allowing every big and small players to be a part of this network by complying with the protocol, which is publicly freely available. But what happens is, in our mental models are so frozen with the way platforms are working, which is providing complete end-to-end service of buyers and seller, and the way we try to interpret the world in that framework. And that is the biggest challenge. So the breaking that mental model is the biggest challenge.
Right. Yeah, I think it would be exciting for us to wait and see how ONDC pans out as the underlying framework, sir. And thanks a lot for doing this podcast. I think a lot more students, entrepreneurs, and many other stakeholders might have more clarity on what it entails to be in different parts of the system now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir. That was a conversation with Koshy, throwing some light on how do we redefine our outlook and approach towards commerce. And I hope you find this insightful. And I hope this could be a stepping stone for many such startups to spring up that could be solving for decentralizing commerce. If you have any thoughts, suggestions, criticisms, or questions, please drop a comment below and we'll work on it together. Thank you for watching Curiously with KVK.